So guys, you know how much noise there's been about the Commanders needing another wide receiver this offseason? It's been repeating the same idea again and again to get Terry McLaurin some real help, go find a proven veteran, add some speed on the outside. And GM Adam Peters hasn't done anything about it, not one move. And I kept wondering why until I actually looked closer at this receiver room and realized they might already have their answer sitting there from the draft. So, stick around, because I'm going to break down who this guy is and why I think the front office is just letting him cook. What's up, Commanders fans? Welcome to NFL Playbook Commanders. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so let me just say it plainly. The guy is Antonio Williams. And look, I know a lot of you are going to roll your eyes at that name because he wasn't some big splashy pick. He wasn't a guy getting first-round buzz. But honestly, the more I sat with this, the more it made sense to me. Think about it this way. Every single insider all offseason has been saying the same thing. Go get speed. Go get another burner outside of Terry McLaurin. And I get why people say that, but I actually went and looked at the room they already have, and speed is not the problem. Everybody in that room can fly. So going out and just adding another fast guy for the sake of it, that doesn't really move the needle. And I think Adam Peters knows that. I think that's exactly why he hasn't pulled the trigger on some big name. Now here's the thing about Antonio Williams that people keep glossing over. This guy went back to school. He didn't have to. He could have declared, tried to get his money early, but he chose to go back to Clemson for another year. And I respect that, honestly, because it shows you something about how he thinks about his own game. The problem is, Clemson as a team was just not good last year. I mean, they brought almost everybody back, guys bought into the program, and they still ended up somewhere around 6-7, 7-6, one of those two in the ACC. It just did not click for that team as a whole. But even in the middle of all that mess, Antonio Williams still balled out individually. 55 catches, and get this, only one drop the entire season. One. That tells you everything about his hands. And when you actually pull up his overall grade as a receiver, it holds up. It's solid. It's not a guy who padded stats in garbage time. It's a guy who was productive even when the team around him wasn't. And then you look at the athletic side of it, and I mean, this dude is a legit athlete. This isn't some guy who's just a possession receiver who runs okay routes. He's got real explosion, real experience, tons of college snaps under his belt already, which honestly matters more than people give it credit for. So when I put all that together, the production, the hands, the athletic profile, the fact that he chose to keep developing instead of bailing early, I start to understand why this front office might be perfectly comfortable running it back with what they've got instead of overpaying for a name in free agency. So that got me thinking, all right, when was the last time this offense actually looked good? And I went back and looked at, 2 years ago now, Jayden Daniels' rookie season, 12-5. Everybody remembers that team as this explosive offense. But I actually went back and looked at the receiver room they had going into that season, and guys, it was not loaded. It was Terry McLaurin, it was Jahan Dotson, it was Luke McCaffrey. Nobody was fully sold on any of those guys as a true number one threat heading into that year. And who was behind them on the depth chart? Dyami Brown, Olamide Zacchaeus, a guy named Dax Milne that half of you probably forgot even existed, an aging Jamison Crowder that everybody kind of knew what he was at that point. That receiver room was not scaring anybody on paper, and yet that offense worked. Then compare that to last year. Last year they went out and loaded up. They brought in Noah Brown off a good year with the Texans, kept Terry McLaurin, added Deebo Samuel, drafted Jalen Lane. On paper, that room looked stacked. Way more proven names than the year before. And how did that go? It didn't work. Jayden Daniels got hurt. Terry McLaurin got hurt. The whole thing just kind of fell apart from an injury and continuity standpoint. So now this year, look at what they're actually building. They brought back Dyami Brown, kept Jalen Lane, drafted Antonio Williams, still got Treylon Burks in the mix, and they added a vet like Van Jefferson, who's solid, not flashy, but solid. This room actually looks a lot closer in shape to that 12-5 roster than it does to last year's group, and I don't think that's an accident. And here's the other piece that I think gets lost in all this receiver talk. That offense 2 years ago, the one everybody remembers is so explosive, it wasn't winning through the air. It was fourth in the entire league in rushing that year. Fourth. Meanwhile, their passing numbers were down near the bottom of the league. Total yards per game was in the bottom half too. They won games because they controlled the clock with the run and because the defense held up. So now you flip to this year, you've got an offensive line that's actually improved, you've got a similar shaped receiver room to that winning year, and you've got Antonio Williams stepping in as a rookie who honestly, I trust more right now than I trusted Jahan Dotson even in his third year. I know that's a bold thing to say, but that's genuinely where I'm at with it. So, when I connect all these dots, I don't think it's crazy at all that Adam Peters sat on his hands this offseason. I think he looked at his roster and said, I already like what I've got here. Now, staying on this offense for a second, because I don't think the receiver room is the only spot where somebody's about to jump out and surprise people. If you shift over to the tight end spot, I think Ben Sinnott is set up in a really similar way. Last year with Kliff Kingsbury calling plays, Ben Sinnott was basically stuck behind a very established, very well-rounded veteran in Zach Ertz, and because of that heavy reliance on the vet, Ben Sinnott never really got the runway to show what he could do. But now you bring in David Blough as the new offensive coordinator, and I think this scheme change is honestly perfect for Ben Sinnott. You can move him around the formation, use him as a blocker, use him as a pass catcher, and let him do damage after the catch with the ball in space, which is exactly where he's at his best. What a lot of people forget, too, is that David Blough wasn't just with Kliff Kingsbury. He was also around Ben Johnson back when Ben Johnson was running things in Detroit under Dan Campbell. And one thing that offense leaned on heavily was 2 tight end sets, that 12 personnel look. So when you think about how this all fits together, you can view Chig Okonkwo more as an oversized wide receiver in this scheme, which leaves John Bates as more of your traditional inline tight end. And that opens up a real lane of opportunity for Ben Sinnott to be that in-between piece who does a little bit of everything. If you actually dig into the numbers, Ben Sinnott has already logged over 600 career snaps, and he's genuinely good in the passing game. Plus, he's solid, consistent, run blocking too, not flashy, but reliable. Last year, they used him more as a run blocker on the field about 60% of the time for run plays, and I think with this new offense, the balance evens out a lot more toward the passing side, which only helps him. And don't sleep on the athletic profile either. This guy tested as one of the more explosive tight ends ever measured coming out. When you stack that against Chig Okonkwo, who's actually been really rough in the run blocking department, worse than a lot of wide receivers, honestly, it tells you Ben Sinnott is going to be the guy on the field more often just because he can do both jobs. Now let's slide over to the defensive side for a second, because there's a name I keep thinking about, and that's Johnny Newton. Second-round pick, dealt with injury, and everybody expected that natural year 2 jump. Early in the season, it actually looked like it was coming. You could see the improvement. But somewhere around the midpoint of the year, whether it was a lingering injury or just everything going sideways for the team as a whole, he just wasn't the same, and it stayed that way the rest of the season. So going into this year, new opportunity, and I think the biggest thing here is bringing back Tim Settle. Because what Tim Settle does is stabilize that interior, and that frees up Johnny Newton to focus on what he's actually best at, getting after the passer. He doesn't have to carry as much of the run defense responsibility. He can play more like a true interior pass rush specialist, get more snaps on the outside at that bigger end spot. And I genuinely think that role fit alone can make a real difference for him this year. And then there's cornerback Mikey Sainristil. I think about his path, comes out of a really strong program, wins a national championship, comes into the league and has a great rookie year, right in the middle of everything going well for the team. And then last year, everything around him just kind of collapsed, and I think that affected him more than people realize. He strikes me as the type of player who really feeds off the energy around him, so if this team is actually better this year, more stable, I expect him to bounce back right along with it. So when you zoom out and look at this whole roster, offense and defense both, I keep landing on the same feeling. There's a real group of guys here who had a rough go of it last year for reasons that had nothing to do with their actual talent, and this year the situation around them looks a whole lot better. I'm not saying every single one of these guys turns into a star, but I do think Antonio Williams, Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and Mikey Sainristil are all set up way better than people are giving them credit for right now. All right, that's what I've got for you today. Appreciate you sticking around till the end. Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know who you're most excited about out of this group. And if you enjoyed this, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next video.